It was a hot Sunday evening in the busy town of Nsud. Traffic was heavy, motorcycles buzzing like bees, traders shouting over their goods, and people returning from church dressed in colorful Ankara. At a police checkpoint near the old palm tree junction, a shiny black Prado Jeep slowed down. The tinted windows made it hard to see inside. Normally, police would wave such a car through. After all, only rich men drove like that. But that day, something felt different. A strange phone call had reached the station only 30 minutes earlier. "Stop that Jeep," the voice on the line had said. "There is something inside that car that must not pass this road." So when the Jeep appeared, the officer signaled it to pull over. The car stopped. Slowly, the door opened. Out stepped a tall man in a flowing white agbada, his red cap tilted slightly on his bald head. His shoes shone like glass under the evening sun. He smiled, showing a golden tooth that glittered like lightning. "Good evening, officers," he said softly. His voice was smooth, like oil on water. "I am Pastor Chibuzo Ik, General Overseer of Kingdom of Everlasting Fire Ministries. I am rushing to lead a crusade. God bless you." The officers glanced at one another. "Sir," one said firmly, "we need you to open your boot. Just routine check." Pastor Chibuzo's smile tightened. He adjusted his agbada. "There is nothing inside," he said, voice low. "I am a servant of God. My people are waiting. Time is going. Please, just open it," another officer insisted. Pastor Chibuzo sighed deeply. He reached into his agbada and pulled out a thick bundle of fresh naira notes. He pushed it forward with that same golden smile. "Take this, my brothers. Do not delay the work of God." The officers stepped back. One shook his head. "We don't want your money, Pastor. Open the boot." The smile vanished from his face. His hand fell to his side. The air felt heavier, like a storm was about to break. Slowly, one officer walked to the back and pulled the latch. The boot clicked open. The world froze. Inside, wrapped in white cloth, lay two human heads. Fresh. Still dripping blood. The smell shot out like pepper smoke, burning everyone's nostrils. One officer staggered back and vomited. Another shouted, "Blood of Jesus." People ran from the road. Women screamed. Men shouted. Children cried. Phones came out immediately. Faces turned pale. And then someone in the crowd screamed, "No. Not Pastor Chibuzo. Not the man who healed my son. Not the famous man of God." The noise spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the whole of Nsud was buzzing with one question: why would a pastor carry human heads in his car? But what froze everyone more was what the officers later said: the heads were not just anybody. They were his own children. The scream spread through Nsud like Harmattan fire. "Chinik! Not Pastor Chibuzo," someone shouted, dropping a basket of oranges. A woman in a bright yellow wrapper fell on the ground, crying uncontrollably. "He prayed for me when my son was dying. He saved him. How can this be?" Another man, clutching his chest, shook his head violently. "No. No. This is a lie from the pit of hell. That man cannot hurt a fly." But the evidence was there, bloody, shocking, undeniable. The police tried to push the crowd back, but more people ran forward, phones in hand, recording. Already, social media was buzzing. Within minutes, half the town had seen the video. One boy, barely 16, screamed into his phone camera, "They caught Pastor Chibuzo with heads in his car. His own children's heads. This world has finished." The words pierced the crowd like a spear. Mothers began to weep. Men stood still like carved statues. The air was heavy with disbelief. Inside the crowd, an old woman, Mama Nena, shook her head slowly. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. "I want people," I said, look closely. Not every man of God is truly of God. But nobody listened. Now see. Another man shouted back angrily, keep quiet, mama. That man gave me money for my rent last year. He is a good man. This is a setup. Confusion grew. Some cried. Some shouted. Some fainted. Meanwhile, Pastor Chibuzo stood still, watching everything, his face empty, his golden tooth no longer shining. He didn't fight. He didn't run. He just watched. One officer shouted at him, Pastor. Speak. What is this? Why are the heads of your own children in your car? But Pastor Chibuzo said nothing. His eyes only moved slowly from one officer to another, like he was looking deep into their souls. And then, in a low voice that barely rose above the chaos, he whispered, they are not dead. They are alive. The officers froze. The crowd gasped. What do you mean? One shouted. But Chibuzo just smiled, a smile so cold it made even the strongest officer shiver. At this moment, everyone was holding their breath. Was Pastor Chibuzo mad? Were the heads really alive? Or was this just the beginning of something darker? Before I reveal what happened next, my people, click subscribe now, so you don't miss what comes after this shocking truth. Because what came out that night shook the whole of Nsut forever. As night began to fall, the news spread far beyond the checkpoint. In Ko Market, traders abandoned their stalls. In Ami's village, people left evening prayers early. Phones rang non-stop. The town was drowning in whispers, famous Pastor Chibuzo has been caught. With the heads of his own children. But the biggest question remained unspoken, heavy in the air like thunder before rain. Why? And in the dark corner of the crowd, someone whispered, ask about the man he visited last month in the forest. The man they called Dibia Okeke. The mystery was only beginning. The night was heavy. The air smelled of sweat, dust, and fear. The checkpoint was still crowded, but now soldiers had arrived. Their rifles glistened under the moonlight as they formed a barricade around the jeep. People whispered from the shadows, too afraid to go home. Nobody wanted to miss what would happen next. The police van door slammed. Pastor Chibuzo was dragged forward, his agbada brushing the dirt. Still, he didn't resist. His face was calm, too calm, like a man who knew something the rest of the world didn't. One officer shouted in his ear, Pastor, answer us. Why are your children's heads in your boot? But Chibuzo only closed his eyes, lifted his face to the sky, and whispered, they are not dead. They are waiting for me. The officer shoved him into the van. The door slammed shut. At the station, people pressed against the gates, crying, shouting, recording with their phones. Everyone wanted answers. Inside the interrogation room, a single bulb flickered. The air was hot, no fan, no window, only silence. Pastor Chibuzo sat on a metal chair, his wrist chained to the table. An inspector leaned forward. Talk. Who told you to do this? Chibuzo's lips trembled. For a moment, it looked like he would cry. Then suddenly, his golden tooth flashed again in a strange smile. They told me in the forest, he whispered. Who? The inspector barked. The spirits of the old ones. But it was Dibia Okeke who showed me the way. The inspector froze. Dibia Okeke. You mean the herbalist in Udi Forest? Chibuzo nodded slowly. He said, if I wanted real power, not the powerless prayers I carried, not the dry fire in my hands, then I must feed the spirits. And the spirit said, the blood of strangers is not enough. They wanted blood of love. The blood that hurts the heart. The inspector slammed the table. Your own children. But Pastor Chibuzo did not answer. He only bowed his head, shaking slightly, like a man carrying a mountain on his back. Outside, the news had already reached far. In Abakpa, traders closed early. In Amokwi, elders gathered under the moonlight, murmuring proverbs. Modu anegi eme aichi dino obimio, one elder said. A man cannot know what lives inside the heart of a spirit. Some believed the pastor was innocent. Others said this was the proof they always feared, that his miracles were not from God. Children who once called him Papa Fire now whispered his name in fear. Mothers who once ran to his church for healing now spat on the ground. But deep in the forest of Woody, far away from the noise, a small hut glowed with dim light. Candles burned in a circle. Strange symbols painted the walls. And inside, an old man with white hair and piercing eyes stirred a black pot slowly. His lips curled into a smile. The spirits are satisfied, he muttered. But he must bring more. The story was no longer just about Pastor Chibuzo. The name Dibia Okeke had entered the air, and with it, a fear far darker than anything Nsud had ever seen. While the town of Nsud was drowning in whispers, far away in the Udi forest, something darker was unfolding. Dibia Okeke was no ordinary man. For decades, his name had been spoken in low tones. Some said he could turn into a vulture at night. Others swore they saw him walk on water during heavy rain. Mothers warned their children never to wander into his part of the forest, for fear of never returning. And yet, pastors, politicians, and businessmen still found their way to his shrine when the hunger for power became unbearable. On that night, while the whole town cursed Pastor Chibuzo, Okeke sat cross-legged on a mat. His white beard glowed in the firelight. His heart smelled of burning herbs and something stronger, blood. Before him, in a clay bowl, sat two strange objects, the carved wooden faces of children, stained with fresh red liquid. He muttered to himself, "Spirit of the old river, the blood has reached you. Now rise in him like fire." The flames in the pot flickered higher, and the ground beneath his hut shook slightly. Back in Nsud, the interrogation continued. "Pastor," the inspector barked, slamming his fist on the table. "Are you telling me you killed your own children because of this herbalist?" Pastor Chibuzo shook his head slowly. "They are not dead," he repeated softly. The inspector leaned closer. "We saw their heads, Pastor. Fresh. Still bleeding." Chibuzo's eyes glistened with something strange. "They will rise again," Okeke promised. The spirits promised. "This is only the beginning." The inspector felt his stomach twist. He had seen criminals, killers, even cultists, but there was something different about this man. His calmness was more frightening than a madman's rage. Outside, the police compound was a storm. People wailed. Some fainted. Reporters from Enugu had arrived with cameras, their bright lights cutting into the night. A young woman in the crowd shouted, "Is this the man we called Daddy Fire? Is this the one who touched the blind and they saw? Chinik, we are finished." The crowd roared, some spitting on the ground, others crying. But in the back of the crowd, Mama Nene shook her head slowly. "This is not ordinary. This is deeper than human eyes can see." Meanwhile, in the forest, Okeke stopped stirring his pot. His eyes turned white. His lips trembled as he spoke words no one else could hear. And far away in the police cell, Pastor Chibuzo suddenly shivered. His chains rattled. His lips moved, whispering the same strange words Okeke was saying in the forest. The inspector jumped back, crossing himself quickly. "What kind of man is this?" he muttered. But deep inside, he already knew. This was only the surface. Something darker was crawling beneath. The station was no longer just a police post. It had become the heartbeat of Nsud. By midnight, the compound was filled with villagers, journalists, and even pastors from other churches, all pressing against the gates, desperate to know if the rumors were true. Inside, Pastor Chibuzo sat chained, his head bowed, lips moving in whispers. His calmness terrified everyone more than if he had screamed. Inspector Obina, the lead officer, refused to leave his side. He had seen armed robbers cry for mercy, seen cultists shake with fear when caught, but this pastor, this one was different. At exactly 1 a.m. the power cut. The single bulb in the interrogation room flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the station. Villagers outside screamed. Moments later, a strange wind blew through the building, rattling the doors and windows though the night was still. Some officers crossed themselves. Others held their rifles tightly. Then it began. Chains on Pastor Chibuzo's hands shook violently. His lips moved faster. The language spilling from his mouth was nothing human. Inspector Obinna shouted, "Stop this nonsense. Pastor, stop." But Chibuzo's head jerked up, and his eyes, glowed faintly, like embers in a dying fire. "The spirits are here," he whispered. "They have come for their food." A chilling cry rose outside the station gates. A woman fainted. Men scattered. The crowd believed the spirits had arrived. Meanwhile, far away in woody forest, Dibia Okeke poured something dark into his pot. His lips trembled. His eyes rolled back. His heart shook with power. He muttered, "Take what is yours. Take the blood of love." And at that exact moment, in the police cell, Pastor Chibuzo let out a sharp scream that cut through the night like a blade. His body shook, chains rattling violently. The officers panicked. One fired a shot into the ceiling. Another ran outside shouting, "This man is not ordinary." The inspector, trembling but determined, grabbed Chibuzo by the collar. "What blood? What love? Tell me what you've done." Chibuzo's lips twisted into a smile. His golden tooth flashed in the darkness. "You will know soon. They are only sleeping. My children are not gone. They will rise again, stronger than ever." Inspector Obinna shoved him back into the chair, sweat dripping from his forehead. For the first time in his life, he felt small, like a child facing something far bigger than him. By morning, the news was everywhere. Famous pastor caught with his children's heads. Dibia Okeke mentioned in police investigation. Was it ritual or madness? But in the hearts of the people, one question grew louder with every passing hour: if this pastor could do this, what about the others? And deep in the shadows of woody forest, Dibia Okeke smiled again, whispering to the spirits, "The sacrifice has begun." Morning light poured over Nsud, but it did not bring peace. The streets buzzed with fear. Traders whispered in corners, children clung to their mothers, and churches prayed louder than ever before. Everyone wanted answers. Why would a man of God harm his own daughters? But few knew the truth. Inside the police station, Inspector Obinna returned to Pastor Chibuzo's cell. He hadn't slept all night. His eyes were red, his uniform crumpled. Chibuzo sat calmly, humming a church hymn. His chains clinked softly as he tapped his fingers against the metal table. "Tell me," Obinna said, voice hoarse. "Why them? Why your own blood?" For the first time, Pastor Chibuzo's face twisted with pain. His voice cracked. "They wanted my daughters because they carried the light. Too much light. The spirits, they hate light." Obinna leaned forward. "Which spirits?" Chibuzo's lips trembled. "The ones Okeke calls, the fathers of the forest. He told me the day would come. He warned me that if I refused, the spirits would consume me instead. So I gave them Adis and Chinya." Obinna's heart sank. Adis and Chinya, the two girls everyone in town thought were studying abroad. They were beautiful, kind, loved by many. Now their heads lay in the cold police freezer. But what Chibuzo said next made Obinna's blood run cold. "They are not dead. Their bodies still breathe. Only their heads were taken. When the ritual is complete, they will walk again. Stronger than human." Obinna slammed the desk. "Enough of these lies. But before he could say more, a junior officer ran in, face pale, eyes wide. "Sir, come and see. The freezer, the heads, they are gone." Obinna froze. "What do you mean gone?" The young officer trembled. "The freezer was locked, but now it is empty. Sir, the heads have vanished." Chaos erupted in the station. Officers rushed in, opening and closing the freezer again and again. Nothing. The white cloths were there, but the heads had disappeared. Chibuzo's golden tooth flashed in a smile. He whispered, "They have risen." And at that same moment, deep in woody forest, two figures moved through the trees. Small bodies. Young. But headless. Their footsteps were slow, their hands reaching out blindly. And behind them, in the shadows, Dibia Okeke's voice guided them forward. "The sacrifice is working. Soon the whole town will bow." The freezer room was chaos. Officers shouted over one another, their boots clattering on the tiled floor. Some swore the heads were never placed there. Others insisted they saw them with their own eyes. But Inspector Obinna knew what he saw. He had carried the white cloths himself. He had locked the freezer. And now, only blood-stained rags remained. He turned to Pastor Chibuzo, who sat calm as river water. "What did you do?" Obinna demanded. Chibuzo tilted his head slowly. "You still don't understand. They are not gone. They are coming home." Obinna's stomach twisted. He wanted to slap the man, but something in Chibuzo's eyes stopped him, that strange fire that wasn't human. Meanwhile, in woody forest, Dibia Okeke walked barefoot across sharp stones without bleeding. His white beard swayed as he raised his staff high. Before him stood the two small bodies of Adis and Chinya. Headless. Yet moving. Their tiny arms reached out, as though searching for something familiar. Their dresses were stained, torn, but their feet moved in rhythm with Okeke's chants. "Children of fire," Okeke's voice boomed. "The blood of love has opened the door. Soon, you will carry power greater than men." The ground trembled. Birds flew from the trees. The forest itself seemed to bow. Back in Nsud, whispers spread faster than harmattan flames. People gathered in clusters, murmuring. "Did you hear? The heads disappeared. Chinik. Maybe the children are not dead. No, they say Okeke has raised them." Women covered their children's eyes. Men locked their doors. Even pastors trembled, afraid their own secrets would be uncovered next. At the station, the inspector ordered extra guards around Chibuzo's cell. But still, the man sat smiling, humming old hymns. At times, his body shook as though someone else was controlling him. One young officer, frightened, whispered to another, "This is not ordinary. We should take him far away, maybe to Abuja." But the inspector shook his head. "No. This ends here. If we let it spread, the whole country will burn." He didn't know how right he was. That night, villagers near Udi swore they saw shadows moving through the trees. Two small figures, walking hand in hand, their necks dripping with red light like fireflies. Behind them, a tall figure with a staff and glowing eyes. Children cried in their sleep. Dogs barked all night. And in the hearts of the people, one truth grew heavier than ever: this was no longer about Pastor Chibuzo. This was about something bigger, something that wanted all of Nsud. That evening, Nsud refused to sleep. Children huddled close to their mothers. Fathers stayed awake, machetes by their doors. Even the crickets seemed to chirp in fear. At the police station, Inspector Obinna sat at his desk, head in his hands. Reports from nearby villages kept pouring in. We saw two small shadows walking near the stream. Dogs howled all night, but nothing was there. A strange red light passed through our compound. Every story carried the same chilling detail: two figures, headless, moving hand in hand. Inside the cell, Pastor Chibuzo began to sing. Not a normal hymn. His voice was deep, strange, echoing like three people singing at once. The words were not English, not Igbo, but something older. The junior officers begged Obinna, "Sir, move him. He is bringing spirits here." But Obinna shook his head. "If we move him, Okeke will find him. We keep him here until morning." Still, the fear in his voice betrayed his words. That night, around 2 a.m. something happened that would scar Nsut forever. A guard outside the station shouted, "Who goes there?" His torch shook in his hand. Out of the darkness, 2 small shapes appeared. Walking slowly. Hand in hand. Their necks glowed faintly, dripping red light that looked like fire. The guard fired his rifle into the air. The shapes did not stop. He fired again. Bullets seemed to vanish into the air. Then the gate of the station rattled violently, though no hand touched it. Villagers watching from a distance screamed and scattered. Women fell on the ground crying. Some fainted on the spot. Inside the cell, Pastor Chibuzo's chains shook as he laughed, not a human laugh, but something deeper, darker. "They have come," he said. "My daughters have returned." The gate burst open. The 2 headless girls stepped inside. Their dresses dragged on the ground, soaked in red. They walked straight toward the building, their feet leaving no prints on the soil. Officers panicked. Some ran, others hid under tables. Inspector Obinna stood frozen, rifle in hand, but his hands shook too hard to aim. The girls stopped at the cell door. Slowly, they raised their hands, placing their small palms against the metal bars. The lock clicked open. Chains fell from Pastor Chibuzo's hands. And in the faraway forest, Dibia Okeke's voice echoed in the wind, "The covenant is sealed." The police station was no longer a place of law. It had become a shrine of fear. Chains lay broken on the floor. The air smelled of blood and smoke, though no fire burned. Pastor Chibuzo stood tall, his white agbada glowing faintly in the darkness. His golden tooth shone like lightning. Before him stood Adiz and Chinya, his daughters, or what remained of them. Their small headless bodies swayed as though listening to music no one else could hear. Inspector Obinna, trembling, raised his rifle. "Stay where you are," he shouted. But Chibuzo only smiled. "You cannot stop what has begun. The blood of love has opened the gate. Nsut will bow." The headless girls stretched their hands forward. The ground shook. Windows shattered. Outside, villagers screamed and fell to their knees. Some prayed loudly. Others cursed the day they ever stepped foot in Chibuzo's church. Then, suddenly, the air changed. A great silence fell. Even the crickets stopped singing. From far in the forest, a drumbeat echoed. Slow. Heavy. Rhythmic. Dum. 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 The sound grew louder, closer, until it filled the night. And then he appeared. Dibia Okeke. The old man walked calmly through the open gates, barefoot, his long white beard glowing under the moonlight. His staff tapped the ground with each step, and every tap made the earth tremble. "The covenant is complete," Okeke announced. His voice roared like thunder. "These children now belong to the spirits. Nsut now belongs to the spirits." The villagers wailed. Some fled into the bush, others collapsed on the ground. Inspector Obinna, summoning his last courage, fired at Okeke. The bullet froze in the air, then dropped harmlessly to the ground. Okeke laughed, deep and long. "Bullets are nothing before the old ones." He turned to Pastor Chibuzo. "You have given them what they wanted. But remember, the spirits never stop eating. They will ask again. And again. Until nothing is left." Chibuzo bowed his head, trembling. "Yes, Master." That night, the headless girls walked out of the station, hand in hand, guided by Okeke. Behind them, Pastor Chibuzo followed like a shadow. The villagers watched in horror as the trio disappeared into the forest, the drumbeats fading with them. By morning, the station was abandoned. Officers who survived refused to return. The villagers locked themselves indoors. Markets remained closed. And ensued, one question remained carved into every heart: how can you trust a man of God, when even his miracles drip with blood? And so, my people, Nsud never remained the same. A town that once shouted, "Daddy fire," now whispered in fear. A man who once prayed for the sick now walked in the forest with spirits. His children, once bright like the morning sun, became shadows of the night. This story is not just about Nsud. It is about us. It is about the danger of following men blindly, forgetting to test their fruits. Because not every miracle comes from heaven. Not every pastor carries light. And sometimes, the devil wears a white agbada. If this story moved you, let it live in your memory. Share it with someone you love. Comment what you learned. And never forget, community is stronger when we keep watch together. Subscribe now, so that more people will hear stories like this, stories that warn, stories that teach, stories that keep our eyes open. Because the next town could be yours.